Okay, let's jump into chapter 2. I am going to review the PowerPoint along with flipping through the book for this video. We'll give it a try. Video lecture. We'll give it a try. So this chapter is Beliefs, Values, and Health. An important focus of this chapter, or learning objectives I could even say. I'm not going to read those to you. We're talking about health, disease, risk factors, preventing disease, what public health means, determinants, the cultural values, justice and equity, etc. Introduction, 10-year Healthy People initiatives, the influence of anthrocultural factors, evolution of health services, that is ever evolving, is always changing, and equity in the distribution of health services. I promise I'm not going to read this to you word for word. Okay, so significance for managers and policymakers. There's so much significance in this, and there's not a right way or a wrong way. We just always do the best we can with healthcare, managing and making those policies. Basic concepts of health, that is reviewed in the book also. It talks about the medical model. Healthcare can be defined as a variety of services believed to improve a person's well-being. Holistic view. Holistic view is something that has come about, well, maybe the past 20 years, where 100 years ago they just focused on one thing, like physical, for example. No one ever spoke to mental awareness or mental health, but now moving forward we use these 4 dimensions. So physical, social, spiritual, and mental. They are all mentioned in the book also. So for optimal health, it talks about all 4 elements. Spiritual well-being has also been recognized as an important internal resource for people coping with illness. There's actually, I think this book speaks to it too. There has been studies, no matter what spirituality you would fall under, but if you have that to lean on, you actually recover better, heal better, there's better outcomes. Quality of life. This is always a huge topic, especially as we age. So we used to die younger. 300 years ago, an old person would have been considered 30 years old, 40 years old. Even in the early 1900s, not many people lived into their 80s and 90s. And now today, a 70-year-old to me is very young still. We do surgeries on 95-year-olds. They're just having a simple knee scope because they run. They run at 95. So quality of life is definitely a hot topic. And on the other realm, the other side of that realm is we can keep people alive with machines and IV fluids and IV food for decades. But does that mean that we should? Maybe in one situation, yes. Maybe in another situation, no. That's very, it's a hot topic up for discussion and debate quite frequently. But quality of life is what we perceive as our best life, I guess. You could be young and not take good care of yourself. So really, that's almost like waiting to die. And then you can be older and just in the most best shape of your life compared to your other counterparts of that same age or stage. But quality of life is important, something to consider. Risk factors. The book talks about risk factors on page 49. These factors include genetic makeup, level of immunity, fitness, personal habits, and behavior. And what I listed there, the only one you cannot control is your genetic makeup. You can improve your immune system. You can increase your fitness and change personal habits and behaviors to decrease your risk factor for disease. But genetics, there's not a thing we can do about it. You have to accept what you got, do the best you can to avoid disease with your own behaviors. So here's a list of behavioral risk factors. That's a great list. And you'll notice some of this data is old. This chart mentions 2014. So even though this book was published, let's see when this book was published, in 19, which was not too long ago, it does take a couple years for books to get published. So you don't have to focus specifically on these numbers, but it's pretty powerful that it says overweight and obese 20 years and older, that's the highest percentage of the population with risk factors and disease. Acute, subacute, and chronic conditions. 3 reasons for a rise in chronic conditions. So here's something else when you're reading data and looking at statistics for healthcare and medicine. That we're going to say, oh, it's so much more prevalent. But maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe there's more humans around, and we do have the ability to diagnose a lot better. So you have to be careful with certain things. But don't let me take away the power of numbers. 12, health promotion. This is slide number 12. That's the number I just called out. Health promotion and disease prevention. Oh, this is such an important thing. So for centuries now in healthcare and medicine, we have treated. But we are really moving the last 40, 50 years. Oh, maybe I shouldn't give it that much credit. Maybe 20, 30 years. We are moving to health promotion and disease prevention. To treat something with taking medications, going to a doctor, having a lab, an x-ray, once it happens, all that is so incredibly expensive, where if we can prevent it, we still might get lab draws, we still might get mammograms, and still might get different screening procedures, but it's just so much cheaper to prevent and also to learn a little bit more about health and the health promotion part of it. There's just better outcomes all the way around, not necessarily all about money, but usually that is the first factor in healthcare decisions, but just better outcomes. I want to go back because I just went to the book on page 50, acute conditions, subacute conditions, and chronic conditions. Just, familiarize yourself with those. A chronic condition is one that is, you might be born with, you may not, but you're going to have it over a long period of time. For example, somebody who smokes cigarettes all of their life and then they're 50 or 60 years old, they have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. That is a chronic condition. Even if they quit smoking cigarettes right then, it's not going to reverse. That damage is done. So that's the definition of chronic. And on page 51 of the book, approximately half of all Americans have at least one major clinical risk factor. I found that to be a pretty powerful statement, whether it's cholesterol, blood pressure, smoking, obesity, etc. All right, I'm going to go back to the slides here. Disease prevention under the Affordable Care Act. You can read all about that. Again, we want to have great outcomes and spend less money, because currently, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but we are one of the most revenue generating, highest capital countries, essentially. I'm doing air quotes, you can't see, but our health outcomes are not always the best. So if we do have all the money and we do have all the insurance, and why aren't we having the best health outcomes? So we have to figure that out. But that's what that Affordable Care Act, they really wanted everyone to have access, the same access, equal access, equity in regards to health. Okay, so public health deals with promoting optimal health as a society as a whole. But again, I don't want to read this to you. Leading cause of death in 2014. These are pretty much in line. It'll be interesting to see how the numbers change over the next couple of years, the next decade or so. Health protection and preparedness in the United States. Dealing with threats, large scale, even like pandemics. Oof, this book was written pre-COVID, but I'm going to get into some more virus stuff here in just a minute. But we have to have that knowledge. We have to have the preparedness here. And I want to go back just a little bit because, again, bear with me because I'm flipping back and forth between this PowerPoint and the book. So I'm going to leave the PowerPoint as it is, but I'm going to jump back to page 54. Primary prevention refers to activities undertaken to reduce the probability that disease will occur. So if obesity runs in my family, I would do my best to minimize that. So I take the steps. Can't really always prevent some of these, so I'm just going to stick with obesity as my example. Secondary prevention is early detection and treatment of the disease. That's where certain cancers come about. We get our eyes checked to make sure that we don't have something in there, because if it's a lot easier to treat something when it just appears versus having it for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Tertiary prevention is the interventions that could prevent complications from chronic disease and prevent further illness or injury. So that's when you have it. You have it, There's not much we can do about it, but we're going to prevent further complications. So an example I can think of for that would be like rheumatoid arthritis. Someone gets it, they're not going to get rid of it. It's a permanent type of disease, but we do want to work efforts with physical therapy, medicines, and certain injections for arthritis, and that prevents them from becoming crippled where the joints and the bones fuse together and they end up in a wheelchair. We can prevent all that now where we couldn't even just 10 years ago. So that's the difference between primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Okay, so then let me keep flipping to public health. I'm on page 56 of the book. I'm going to get caught up here in just a second to the PowerPoint. Deals with broad societal concerns about ensuring conditions that promote optimal health for the society of the whole. I read that from the PowerPoint also, but I wanted to read it again from the book. Just skim this book, you guys. Take away the knowledge that you see pertinent. Okay, so here we are. I'm back to this slide, health protection and preparedness. Global pandemics. In your book on page 57, it references influenza, the flu. The mean old flu. Flu A and flu B was pretty much all we talked about for about a decade. And then suddenly COVID arrived last year and changed everything. If you look, this is just small knowledge. On the bottom of page 57, it talks about the novel H1N1. That's what we would have called COVID back in 2009. We didn't call it COVID then. We called it H1N1. You guys, some of you may remember the swine flu, bird flu. So these type of viruses are not new. Bottom of page 58 in the book, coronaviruses are believed to cause most of the common colds. Then it mentions SARS and MERS. That was something prevalent. Okay, I'm going to keep going. On page 59, it talks about different global pandemics, if you will, diseases, tuberculosis, HIV, which HIV, by the way, we're not having less mothers that are pregnant or have HIV, but what we have are medicines, the antivirals that help prevent transmitting it from mother to baby. So that's important to know. Hepatitis is mentioned. Some of these diseases they're not going to go away. Page 60 talks about bioterrorism. Keep reading. Okay, now I'm officially caught up between the book and the PowerPoint. Page 62 in the book references these determinants of health, the Blum's model of health determinants: environment, lifestyle, heredity, and medical care. And again, the one thing that you and I cannot change is our heredity. We can't alter those genetics. Maybe one day, maybe in 100 years, but not right now. And I want to mention on page 63, the positive relationship between socioeconomic status, so that means your job or where you live, and health may be explained by the general likelihood that people who have better educations also have higher income. And that's true. We could argue that all day long, but that at the end of the day, that is true. If you do have a better education and make more money, or we could even take away the education part. Let's just say you win the lottery, or you make money doing physical work. You don't even need an education for that. The likelihood of being healthier and happier, there is a link there because it gives you options and changes where you live, how you take care of yourself. It even changes the food you eat, etc. Okay, I'm going to keep going. This is pictured. I saw that picture somewhere. Hang on. In the book. Maybe I didn't. I'm going to give that up. Just continue reading about determinants of health. Chapter 19. Slide 19. Measures related to health. The measures of physical health, morbidity, mortality. That's on page 65 in the book. So morbidity is disease and disability, and mortality is it's death. That's when we reach the end. Longevity is life expectancy. That has changed significantly. Oh, there's a table for that. On page 66, just check out those numbers and look at the difference between men and women. And this, just if you have extra spare time, Google the life expectancy in like 1850 and 1905 and even maybe 1930, 1970. It typically increases as we get closer to today's time. People are living a lot longer. Morbidity talks about population risk, incidence, counts the number of new cases in the population within a certain time frame. Prevalence determines the total number of cases in a specific point in time. So when all those news cast and news stories last year, or maybe even early this year, that would tell us how many COVID cases we had in a certain county or what have you, that was prevalence. All right, so page 67. Let me keep up with this. There's that chart. Measures related to health, mental health, social health, spiritual health. We talked about that a little earlier in the chapter also. And in the book, page 68 and 69, that talks about more about mortality. Okay, so on page 68 and in the PowerPoint right here, it's referencing crude measures, specific measures, etc. Crude measure or crude rates refer to the total population. They're not specific to any age group. Crude birth rate is the number of live births within a year divided by the total population. And this is just all in your book, you guys. I don't want to read it to you. Anthrocultural beliefs. It's just what we, as humans, the society, if you will, dictate how and what's important. Okay. Let me finish this PowerPoint because I want to go back to the book. Equitable distribution. The book does speak to market justice and social justice. You guys can read that. Back on page 74 in this section of the book, I did highlight that healthcare delivery is largely in private hands, and that is something that it makes us different than other countries. There's some trust issues with healthcare. Some people want government involved. Some people do not want government involved. But currently, it's a large private sector to healthcare, which is why we have health insurance. Equitable distribution of healthcare is on page 74, and it's on this slide. I mean, the fact is, it's just not equitable as it should be. We're better than we were 25 years ago, but we have more room to make it equitable and accessible to all. Hopefully we will get there one day, but it's just going to take some time. Another table in this PowerPoint. Integration of healthy people. So in your book it mentions Healthy People 2020, but that initiative has come and gone. We're working towards Healthy People 2030. You're welcome to Google that and look at how it changed. And that is it. I'm not going to go back in the book. You guys can read. And please let me know if you have any questions. I can't think of anything else standing out that I should tell you. And yeah, just outreach me if you need anything, and I hope you have a good week.